Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Betty Chin. Will Brazil officially join China's Belt and Road Initiative? According to Hong Kong media outlet South China Morning Post, citing Brazilian media ICL Noticias, Brazilian officials are in talks with China regarding joining the BRI, and a cross-minister working group has been formed. However, the Brazilian government is also assessing whether membership in the BRI could potentially impact Brazil's relations with Washington, especially if Trump wins the U.S. presidential election. Joining us today are Leonard Chao, National Tsinghua University Adjunct Professor, and Yanping Su, National Zhengzhi University Department of Political Science Professor. A warm welcome to both of you on the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
As previously mentioned, according to Hong Kong media citing local Brazilian reports, the Chinese embassy in Brazil has informed the Brazilian presidential office that Brazil's membership in the BRI is expected to be officially confirmed during Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit in Brazil in November. However, the reports also indicate that Brazilian diplomats have advised President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva to delay the announcement until after the U.S. presidential election results are revealed on November 5th. So let's start with the talks today. Ambassador Chao, China is attempting to make Brazil its most important ally, or you can say trading partner in South America. And also we know that President Xi Jinping is going to have a visit Brazil in November and making the official announcement of its participation in the BRI. What's China's true ambition when it comes to its presence in South America?
Well, okay, I can say that it's fair to comment on over the past 2 decades, as the China. Its interest in the Latin America have grown exponentially, and rapidly. Okay, China's objectives are threefold. Number one, economic. Number two, diplomatic. And number three, geopolitical. Well, first, number one, economically, obviously, China's relations, particularly the trade relations with Brazil, has been expanding very rapidly over the past few years. China has been so far the number one trading partner of the country of Brazil, ahead of United States. So the figure, I got a figure in the year of 2022. The total trade volume figure has reached the 154.1 billion US dollars, more than that of the United States. And so that's number one. And China obviously would like to see Brazil as a tempting and a major trading partner in the Latin America. After all, it's the largest country in Latin America. So that's the first reason, first objective, economic. Second objective is diplomatic. Of course, China has been approaching Latin America very, very aggressive over the past few years. The reason I'm trying to undermine Taiwan's diplomatic stronghold in that part of the world. So, and the third reason is geopolitical. Now, geopolitical has become the name of the game for almost every country in the world now. So how can they, rule out the possibility of having some high-tech or chips cooperation? The new ties is coming into a reality between the two countries. So that is in this context for Latin America. So China is trying to approach, or the other way around, Brazil is trying to approach China. Both deserve each other. Both can match each other in many respects. Now, this visit of Xi Jinping's in November is in the background of the G20 Leaders Summit. G20 Leaders Summit is going to take place in the mid-November in the Buenos Aires, is in Brazil. So that is so Mr. President Lula is waiting vigorously and very, desperately to meet with Xi Jinping in this regard. As a matter of fact, Lula himself is a very, we might as well call him a romantic or passionate leader of Latin America. Latin America itself is a romantic part of the world, as you know very well. So Lula is not the first time the president of the country Brazil. He used to serve the president from the year 2010 to 2003 to 2010, the first presidency. During that presidency, Lula has been interested in working with China. And now he sees China then as a diplomatic partner, working with Brazil in the agenda of the South-South cooperation, But now he's coming back last year, 2023. January last year, he became coming back as a president for his second presidency. Shortly after his second presidency, in April last year, he paid a state visit, Lula, with a large delegation to Beijing, China, meeting with Xi Jinping. Now it's Xi Jinping coming back, so he couldn't wait to see Xi Jinping once again. But this time the agenda would be different. He'd like to see China as a long-term strategic partner, not only a diplomatic partner. It's a strategic partner. It's a long-term contest. So look for. I think that is the contest they're going to work something out for this summit meeting.
Thank you, Ambassador, for the analysis. You just talked about the threefold aspects that the benefits for China, economic, diplomatic, and geopolitical. Professor Su, in your opinion, what kind of benefit can Brazil reap from deepening its relationship with China? Do you agree with what Ambassador just said?
Yes, I generally agree with what the ambassador just said. Well, beginning from 2017, China adopted the strategy of the Belt and Road Initiative in Latin America. Well, basically that strategy was, adopted in 2013, but only after 4 years, that strategy was implemented in Latin America. And Panama was the first country who joined the BRI initiative, and among these largest countries in Latin America, Argentina joined the BRI in 2022. And in my view, the goal of the BRI is twofold. The first goal is to export the excess domestic production capacity to the BRI countries. And the second goal is, of course, to broaden China's strategic importance in the global trade and political arena. So as China has done to promote this strategy to other countries, China's increasing investments in the region, especially in Brazil, is also serves for pursue this goal. And for Brazil, so regarding Brazil's side about whether it can garner more from China if it signed the agreement with China, I think, there are some possibilities. So, for example, I think it is possible that China will increase more investment in Brazil. But in terms of the trades, as Ambassador just said, China has already become the largest trading partner in Brazil. So I think it doesn't make a lot of sense for promoting much more trade by signing that agreement, but there might be two potential purposes if such an agreement would be signed. The first, probably Brazil wants to increase, to attract more investment from China, and second, probably it could be a kind of signal for Brazil to express itself as a more autonomous actor in the region of Western Hemisphere, and but that would signal a dramatic change for Brazil in the region, and also it could influence the relationship between Brazil and the United States. So I think the potential impacts could not be underestimated.
So you talk about closer ties between China and Brazil might affect Brazil's relationship with the U.S. Could you please elaborate more about that? Like, how will the U.S. and its ties with Brazil be affected?
Well, first of all, basically, China is the largest trading partner to Brazil, but it's not the largest investor in terms of FDI, foreign direct investment to Brazil. The largest FDI investing country is actually the United States. And according to the FDI statistics, at least in the year of 2022, the U.S. outward FDI to Brazil is about 81 billion US dollars, while the Chinese outward FDI to Brazil is just about $223 million. So that means that the FDI from the U.S. to Brazil is actually more than 300 times of the FDI from China to Brazil. So if such an agreement was signed, it is possible that the U.S. will try to find a way to put a little bit more pressure to Brazil by reducing the investment, for example. But that is one possible strategy, but let's see what it could happen.
So talking about the complicated geopolitical situation, now the U.S. presidential election is around the corner. And as you said, Brazilian president, very passionate. So he publicly support Kamala Harris. What if Trump wins? That will definitely complicate a situation between Brazil and the United States. And if Brazil and China establish an alliance to fight against the U.S., how will that affect the situation in South America or in the region, Ambassador?
Well, we have to be fair, to say that we have to fairly, evaluate Mr. Lula. He himself, he's not a follower or believer of so-called zero-sum game. I think in the recent, interview, he said in public that he's not going to promote, approach the relations with China to compromise their relations with the United States. He said, like to, we like to befriend both countries. After all, we all know very well, Brazil and the United States are the two, largest democracies in the Western Hemisphere. All right, and then but personally, Lula, I read somehow that Lula himself, he's not very comfortable with the way Donald Trump handled relations with a Latin American country, certainly including the major player of Latin America, Brazil. So somehow that's why this time around he bothered to speak publicly that he support Kamala Harris instead of Donald Trump. I think that's a reason behind that. And then of course we don't know who is going to get a ticket, who is going to win the election. That remains to be seen. But I think another reason we cannot rule out the possibility is that the Lula is like several other Latin American leaders. They don't like the way Donald Trump's immigration policy, particularly vis-a-vis the Mexico and some other countries, Central American countries. So their ideology is kind of a collective one, all the Latin American leaders. So that's why I say that Kamala Harris, of course, if Kamala Harris to be elected, most of the time she will follow suit to what Joe Biden is doing. Right. And for the United States relations with Latin America, for U.S. relations more specifically with Brazil, that still has a room for improvement. Obviously, in the recent few years, it's fair to say, no doubt about it, the U.S. has ignored her backyard countries because of what happened in the Ukraine and what happened in the Gaza Strip. So U.S. pay attention to those parts of the world. So and then that leaves some void for China to fill in. Not only in Latin America, but also Africa. Look what happened in Africa. Just not too long ago, China is having an African Leaders Summit in Beijing, China. All the countries in Africa, they were invited and they were attending that, except my former household, Eswatini, where I was the ambassador from Taiwan. And I, speaking of which, I can proudly say that I'm very proud for what I've done for the government of the Republic of China, for people of Taiwan, that I, consolidate the diplomatic, stronghold in Africa, that Eswatini. So Africa is another void, and China has filled in so far effectively. Also the Middle East, Saudi Arabia relation with China is getting, upper hand. Right. Now the Saudi leaders are even considering using the renminbi to be a new petrol currency. So all the things, Africa, Middle East, and then now it's South America. They're all the void left by the U.S. policy. So I think either Biden or Harris or even Trump, they have every reason to be concerned about what will happen between China and Brazil. Because their visit, the summit, is taking place shortly after the election. November 5th is the election day, but they don't know the result until early, December for the electoral vote, electoral college to decide who's going to be the winner.
Brazil is one of the only 3 countries in South America that has not joined the BRI. Besides Brazil, the other 2 countries are Colombia and Paraguay, with Paraguay being a diplomatic ally of Taiwan. China has invited Brazil to join the BRI multiple times, and however, Brazil has not made a decision due to concerns about potentially alienating the West. So what is the main reason for allowing Brazil to join China now? Why now? Why are they considering joining the BRI now, Professor?
Well, I think this kind of information was released probably for several reasons. And the main reason is that probably the Brazilian government is trying to find a way to attract more attention from the United States. Well, in my view, I don't think there is a very high chance that Brazil will sign an agreement or the MOU with China in terms of the joining the BRI. But it is likely that releasing such information, the U.S. government was a little bit forced to try to reach out to the Brazilian government to talk about what kind of thing that Brazil needs and what kind of issues that both countries can solve. So that's one thing. But the other thing is that I don't think the U.S. government never exclude the possibility that the Brazil will join the BRI. And probably the main reason, like I said before, is that if Brazil really thinks that attracting more investment from China is a good thing, probably signing the BRI would be the good idea, but probably not about promoting more trade, because as I said, the trading relationship between Brazil and China have been increasing in the past several years, and China has already become the largest trading partner with Brazil. So that could not be the main reason. And so investment could be the one reason. And the other reason, like I said, probably Brazil is also trying to find a way to act as a more autonomous actor in the region. Yeah.
So last year, Argentina elected right-wing President Javier Milei, who has explicitly rejecting joining the BRICS and has pushed back against Brazil and China. However, in April of this year, he formally submitted a letter of intent to join NATO. Does Argentina's growing distance from China indicate a clear political shift in favor of Brazil? Beijing is increasing its economic involvement in Brazil on an unprecedented scale, facilitating the direct export of Brazilian products through the Chancay port in Peru. The COSCO Chancay Harbor, a project by China COSCO Shipping Group, is Peru's largest BRI project, with an expected investment of $3.5 billion for its construction. And this will reduce the shipping time for containers to China from 35 days to 23 days, meaning transportation costs are expected to decrease by 30%. So will this investment become a very strong leverage for China diplomatically in South America, Ambassador?
Yes. Well, although what happened to Argentina, but also the recent poll, of the 3 countries, namely Mexico, Argentina, and Brazil, shows that the Chinese involvement in Latin America, the people, their view of the China's engagement, and I think that most of the people there, 3 countries, they think that it's a net positive. It's a net positive. Speaking of Peru, there's not a single case. China has taken the similar approach to some other part of the world, like in the Indo-China Peninsula. They're approaching Bangladesh, Pakistan. They're using the country for some new port, even tunnel to be built across it, for the shipping of the Chinese exports. So this time around, in Latin America, I'd like to add something, if I may, that the BRI, we're talking about BRI is not necessarily a good news. 100% good news. BRI has become a controversial issues in Central Asia, in some of the Southeast Asian countries, let alone that in Africa as well, because the financial syndrome after the BRI has become a well-known story to many countries in the world. So this time, I think Brazil, as a leader of Brazil, Lula has every reason to be cautious. But he rather like to say that in public, using as a kind of a propaganda to show that he will be open. He doesn't say as yet say that he will for sure to sign up the BRI with China.
Nothing's finalized yet.
Not finalized. He said I'll be open to some idea of talking about this. So he's kind of play the game. Okay, see, he's a seasoned. Okay, he's an old man, 70-something, but he's a seasoned, and he's a seasoned politician, diplomat. He likes to play around this game with China. I think all the countries involved, they are for the benefit. I think it's the economy, but it's still some setbacks are coming up, for sure. And the U.S. we're trying definitely. He would like to consolidate the base with Brazil. I think so far we don't know the final is not settled yet.
Right.
But it's the atmosphere, the tendency is there. So I think U.S. has every reason to be concerned about that. But so far the winner in comparison between China and the U.S. for the approach engagement in Latin America, or more specifically in Brazil, China seems to be gaining an upper hand.
It seems that Chinese investment in South America, or actually not just South America, in a lot of different countries, are just like a double-edged sword. On the one hand, people are happy about that, but just like what Professor says, some countries, they still want to keep their autonomy. So this is a very delicate balance. And not to mention that with stronger or tighter Chinese control over this port, making it one of the largest commercial ports in South America, this will also highlight a diplomatic void of the United States in that region. How do you see the situation, Professor? Do you think that these countries can still keep their autonomy?
Yeah, well, first of all, regarding the discussion about Shanghai, of course, both Brazil and Peru will benefit from the port if it is built, of course, because it is a very important infrastructure port. But we should not ignore another fact that if Brazil wants to benefit more, it is necessary for Brazil and Peru to build a long highways or railway connecting Port Shanghai to the nearest states in Brazil. So things are more complicated than expected. And regarding the voids that you just mentioned, that's the U.S. debt and whether China will try to fill the void. Well, that is for sure. But we cannot ignore the fact that this thing has been already happening not now, but since 2016, when Donald Trump assumed the presidency in the United States, like Ambassador just said, during Trump's administration, these 4 years, the U.S. did not have a pretty good relationship with Latin America. So, of course, that provided very good opportunity for China to fill it in. But the other thing is that Latin America and the Caribbean region is not the main focus for China. Because China might be a more influential actor in the Asia-Pacific region rather than Latin America. And so I think in that sense, even when Biden came into power, it changed the trajectories of foreign policies with the Latin American countries to become more friendly. It didn't dramatically change the whole situation, but things are getting better and better.
We know that now the U.S. has been very busy with situation or tensions, say, in Ukraine and also in the Middle East. Do you think that this gives China the window of opportunity to exert its greater influence in South America, Ambassador?
Why not?
Why not?
Betty, if you are the leader of China, why not do that? Another context I'd like to point out is that when we talk about Latin America, let's not forget that some historical shadow, historical reason. Because for Latin Americans, for those people, whenever U.S. are trying to say something to the Latin American people and Latin American leaders, don't do anything with China, this and that. Or they tell them what to do, what not to do. That can easily remind the Latin American people of the so-called Monroe Doctrine. Many hundred years ago, because that was that's easily revived kind of this is an old time power. The influence over the Latin American people. So I think let's say that whatever China is doing or not doing, that obviously, naturally the U.S. is leaving some vulnerability in their engagement or their reputation, image with the Latin Americans. So I think this time leave China even in a more positive opportunity to get involved. And China, of course, they take a different approach. So whatever U.S. asks you to do, this and that, we're open. Leave it up to you. So China has taken that approach. I think it's working for China's interests with African, with the Latin American now. So I think that definitely, the two major wars, still they have hampered the U.S. diplomatic initiatives around the world a lot. So I think someone said that maybe after elections over, I say at least one of the two major wars, one of them has to get settled somehow, even kind of tentatively, that would serve the interest of U.S. because U.S. cannot afford continuing get involved in this kind of aftermath or nightmare of the two major wars.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you, Professor. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for your insights. If you like our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching our show today. Stay safe and see you next time.